The photograph landed on her desk with a soft thud, and Harper Thorne felt her stomach drop as she stared at the glossy image of the charity gala she had somehow been assigned to photograph. "I cannot do this," Harper said, looking up at her boss Marcus with wide eyes. "These events are not my thing. I photograph construction sites and manufacturing plants for industrial magazines. I do not know anything about society galas." Marcus shrugged, clearly unmoved by her protests. "The regular society photographer called in sick, and you are the only one available." "It is one night, Harper. Point, shoot, smile. You will be fine." That was how Harper found herself standing in the grand ballroom of the Riverside Hotel 3 nights later, feeling completely out of place in a borrowed black dress that was a size too large and shoes that pinched her toes. The room glittered with chandeliers and champagne glasses, filled with people who moved with the easy confidence of those who had never worried about rent or student loans. She clutched her camera like a lifeline, taking shots of the crowd while trying to remain invisible. She had just captured a photo of an elderly woman dripping in diamonds when someone bumped into her from behind. Harper stumbled forward, her camera swinging dangerously on its strap, and she whirled around with a sharp exhale of frustration. "Watch where you are going," she snapped before she could stop herself. The man who had bumped into her was tall, easily over 6 feet, with dark hair that was perfectly styled and eyes so blue they looked almost unreal under the ballroom lights. He wore a tailored tuxedo that probably cost more than her entire yearly wardrobe, and he was staring at her with an expression of genuine surprise. "I apologize," he said, his voice deep and measured. "That was entirely my fault. Are you all right? Is your camera damaged?" Harper checked her equipment quickly, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment as she realized how rudely she had spoken. "It is fine. I am sorry for snapping at you. It has been a long night. You are the photographer." He tilted his head slightly, studying her with an intensity that made her want to squirm. "For tonight, yes. Not usually. I normally photograph buildings and machinery which do not complain when I step on their toes or get their bad side." She was babbling now, nervous under his gaze. The corner of his mouth lifted in what might have been amusement. "I imagine buildings are much easier subjects than people." "Significantly easier," Harper agreed. She lifted her camera. "I should get back to work. Again, sorry for being rude." She started to move past him, but he spoke again. "Wait, would you mind taking a photo of me, for the event records?" Harper turned back, confused. Usually, people at these events avoided the camera unless they were posing in groups. "Sure. Do you want to stand by the column or near the window? Wherever you think is best." "You are the professional." There was something in the way he said it that did not sound patronizing, just genuinely interested in her opinion. Harper found herself relaxing slightly as she positioned him near a window where the city lights created a nice backdrop. Through the lens, he was even more striking, and she took several shots before lowering the camera. "Got it," she said. "Can I get your name for the caption?" "Ian Lawrence," he said, and Harper nodded, making a mental note to write it down later. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Lawrence. I am Harper." "Just Ian is fine." He paused, then asked, "Have you eaten? The catering here is actually quite good, and you look like you have been working non-stop." Harper glanced at the elaborate buffet table laden with food she could not pronounce. "I am working. I should not really eat on the job." "Who would know? Fair point." Her stomach chose that moment to growl audibly, and she pressed a hand to it with an embarrassed laugh. "Okay, maybe I will grab something small." Ian walked with her to the buffet, and Harper became aware of how people watched him as he moved through the room. There was a deference in the way others stepped aside, the quick glances and nods of recognition. She wondered if he was someone important, Maybe a politician or a local celebrity she should recognize. She selected a few items that looked safe, while Ian filled a plate with surprising enthusiasm for someone in such a formal setting. They found a quiet corner near a potted palm, and Harper balanced her plate awkwardly while trying to keep her camera secure. "So," Ian said, "what is it like photographing buildings and machinery? That seems like a specialized field." "It is boring to most people," Harper admitted, "but I love it. There is something beautiful about industrial design, about things built for function rather than form. A well-designed factory floor or a perfectly engineered bridge tells a story. That is a unique perspective." Ian seemed genuinely interested, not just making polite conversation. "How did you get into that line of work?" "My father was a construction foreman. I grew up on work sites, playing in hard hats that were too big for me. I always loved watching things being built, seeing the bones of a structure before the pretty facade went up." Harper took a bite of something that tasted like salmon and herbs. "What about you? What do you do?" "I run a company," Ian said vaguely. "What kind of company?" "Manufacturing. We make industrial equipment, actually. Fabrication machinery, assembly line components, that sort of thing." Harper's eyes lit up. "Really? That is fascinating. What is the name of your company?" Ian hesitated for just a moment. "Lawrence Industrial." The name meant nothing to Harper, who made a mental note to look it up later. "Do you ever visit your manufacturing floors? I bet they would make great photographs." "I do, regularly. I think it is important to understand every aspect of the operation." He set down his plate. "You should come photograph one of our facilities sometime. I would be interested to see what you capture." Harper laughed. "Is that a serious offer, or are you just being polite?" "I am always serious about my work," Ian said, and there was something in his eyes that made Harper believe him. "Here, let me give you my card." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a simple business card with raised lettering. Harper took it, noting the weight of the expensive cardstock. The card simply read, "Ian Lawrence, CEO, Lawrence Industrial," with a phone number and email address. "CEO," Harper repeated, feeling stupid. "I probably should have known who you are." "Why would you?" "We are not exactly a household name unless your household is very interested in industrial manufacturing." Ian smiled, and it transformed his entire face from merely handsome to something that made Harper's heart skip. "I prefer it that way, honestly. It is refreshing to meet someone who does not know or care about my company's quarterly earnings." Before Harper could respond, a woman in a silver dress appeared at Ian's elbow, her hand touching his arm with familiar ease. "Ian, darling, there you are. The mayor wants to speak with you about the donation." "Of course." Ian straightened, his demeanor shifting into something more formal. He glanced at Harper. "It was nice meeting you, Harper. I hope you will take me up on that offer." He disappeared into the crowd with the woman, and Harper was left holding his business card and feeling oddly deflated. She tucked the card into her camera bag and got back to work, pushing thoughts of blue eyes and genuine smiles out of her mind. The rest of the gala passed in a blur of photographs and sore feet. Harper captured images of speeches and dancing and elaborate flower arrangements, all while trying not to think about the CEO who had seemed genuinely interested in her ramblings about industrial photography. It was probably just politeness, she told herself. Men like that did not really care about women like her. When Harper finally got home to her small apartment at 1 in the morning, she kicked off the torturous shoes and pulled out Ian's business card. A quick internet search revealed that Lawrence Industrial was not just a company but an empire. Ian Lawrence was worth hundreds of millions, possibly billions depending on which website she believed. He had inherited the company from his father 5 years ago and had expanded it into international markets. He was 32, unmarried, and according to several business magazines, one of the most eligible bachelors in the city. Harper closed her laptop with a groan. Of course he was. Of course, the first man who had shown genuine interest in her work in months was so far out of her league they were not even playing the same sport. She went to bed and tried to forget about Ian Lawrence and his two blue eyes. The next morning at work, Harper uploaded her photos from the gala and was pleased to see they had turned out well despite her discomfort at the event. She was midway through editing when Marcus appeared at her desk again. "Good work last night," he said. "I got a call this morning from someone at the gala. They want to hire you for a private photography job." Harper looked up in surprise. "Really? Who?" "Some big manufacturing company, Lawrence Industrial. They want you to do a photo essay on one of their facilities. It is a week-long project and they are paying extremely well." Marcus named a figure that made Harper's eyes widen. "I told them you would call to set up the details." Her heart was suddenly racing. Ian had been serious. He had actually followed up on his casual offer from last night. Harper tried to keep her voice steady as she said, "Sure, I can do that. Send me the contact information." She spent the rest of the day alternating between excitement and anxiety. This was exactly the kind of project she loved. But the idea of seeing Ian again made her nervous in a way that had nothing to do with her photography skills. She finally called the number Marcus had given her in the late afternoon and was connected to a woman who introduced herself as Ian's executive assistant. "Mr. Lawrence would like you to start Monday if possible," the assistant said briskly. "The project will take place at our main manufacturing facility just outside the city. You will have full access to all areas, and Mr. Lawrence will personally give you a tour on the first day." Harper agreed to the terms, hung up, and sat staring at her phone for a long moment. This was professional, she reminded herself. Just a job. The fact that the CEO was attractive and had nice eyes was completely irrelevant. Monday morning arrived cold and gray, with the kind of drizzle that made everything look miserable. Harper drove to the Lawrence Industrial Facility, which turned out to be a sprawling complex of buildings that looked both modern and industrial. She parked in the visitor lot and grabbed her camera equipment, trying to calm the butterflies in her stomach. The receptionist directed her to the executive floor, where Ian's assistant met her with a professional smile and a visitor badge. "Mr. Lawrence is finishing a meeting, but he will be with you shortly. Can I get you coffee or water?" "Coffee would be great, thank you." Harper was examining a display of awards the company had won when she heard Ian's voice behind her. "Harper, I am glad you could make it." She turned, and there he was, looking just as good in a navy suit as he had in a tuxedo. "Thank you for the opportunity. I am excited to see what you do here." "Then let us not waste time." Ian gestured toward the elevator. "I thought we would start with the main manufacturing floor and work our way through the facility. Feel free to photograph anything that interests you." As they descended to the factory floor, Ian asked, "Have you photographed many industrial facilities?" "Quite a few, but mostly for technical magazines. This is the first time I have been given creative freedom to do a full photo essay." Harper adjusted her camera strap. "I want to capture not just the machines but the people who work with them, the way everything connects." The elevator doors opened onto the factory floor and Harper's breath caught. It was massive, filled with machinery that gleamed under industrial lighting. The sounds of production created a symphony of clangs and hums and rhythmic pounding. Workers in safety gear moved with practiced efficiency, and the whole thing was exactly the kind of controlled chaos Harper loved to photograph. "This is incredible," she breathed, already lifting her camera to capture the sweep of the floor. Ian watched her work with an expression she could not quite read. Most people find factories boring or ugly. Then most people are not looking properly. Harper moved deeper into the space, already lost in the viewfinder. She captured a worker's hands guiding metal through a fabrication machine, the concentration on his face. She photographed the patterns of sparks from a welding station, the geometric precision of stacked components waiting for assembly. Ian followed her quietly, occasionally explaining what different machines did or introducing her to workers. Harper noticed how the employees responded to him, with respect, but also genuine warmth. He knew many of them by name and asked about their families, their concerns. This was not a CEO who stayed locked in an ivory tower. They spent 4 hours on the factory floor before Ian suggested they break for lunch. Harper was surprised to find it was already past noon. Time had flown while she worked. "There is a cafeteria on the second floor, or I can have something brought to my office," Ian offered. "Cafeteria is fine. I want to see more of how things work here." The cafeteria was bright and clean, with windows overlooking the facility grounds. Workers in various uniforms filled the space, talking and laughing. Ian led Harper through the lunch line, and she noticed how people greeted him without the stiffness she might have expected. They sat at a corner table, and Harper reviewed some of the photos on her camera while eating. Ian leaned over to look, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something subtle and expensive. "These are remarkable," he said quietly. "You have an eye for finding beauty in unexpected places." Harper felt her cheeks warm. "Thank you. Your facility makes it easy. Everything is so well organized and maintained. That is important to me. These people spend most of their lives here. It should be a place they can take pride in." Ian took a drink of his water. "My father always said that a company is only as good as its workers, and workers are only as good as the environment you provide them." He sounds like he was a wise man. He was. Something flickered across Ian's face, a brief shadow. "He died 5 years ago. Heart attack, completely unexpected. I inherited the company when I was 27 and had no idea what I was doing." Harper set down her camera. "It seems like you figured it out. I had good people around me and I was willing to listen and learn, but it was terrifying for a long time." Ian met her eyes. "I still have moments of doubt, wondering if I am making the right decisions, if I am honoring what my father built." There was a vulnerability in his admission that made Harper's chest tighten. "I think anyone who cares that much is probably doing just fine." They finished lunch and spent the afternoon touring other parts of the facility. The design offices where engineers worked on new product developments, the quality control labs, the shipping and receiving docks. Harper photographed everything, slowly building a visual narrative of how the company functioned. By the time 5 o'clock rolled around, Harper's feet hurt and her camera felt heavy, but she was exhilarated. This was exactly the kind of work she loved. "Same time tomorrow?" Ian asked as they walked back to the executive floor. "Absolutely. Thank you again for this opportunity. Thank you for seeing my company the way I see it." Ian paused, then added, "Would you like to get dinner sometime? Outside of work, I mean, to discuss the project or not discuss it?" "Whatever you prefer." Harper's heart jumped into her throat. "Like a date?" "Yes, like a date." Ian smiled slightly. "Unless I am completely misreading the situation, in which case please forget I said anything and I will die of embarrassment." "No, you are not misreading it. I would like that." Harper could not keep the smile off her face. "But I should warn you, I am really boring outside of work. I live in a tiny apartment with a cat. I watch too much television, and I have not been on a date in over a year. I live in a house that is too big for one person. I work too much, and my last relationship ended 2 years ago because she said I cared more about machinery than people. So I think we are even on the boring scale." Ian pulled out his phone. "Can I have your number?" They exchanged numbers, and Harper floated out to her car feeling like she was in some kind of dream. Men like Ian Lawrence did not ask women like her on dates. This did not happen in real life, but apparently it did. Ian texted her that evening while she was eating leftover Chinese food and watching a home renovation show. "Are you free Friday night? I know a place with excellent food and no society photographers." Harper laughed and texted back, "Friday works." "Should I be worried about your grudge against society photographers? Only the ones who do not appreciate industrial photography." They continued to text throughout the evening, easy conversation that ranged from work to favorite movies to their shared love of terrible puns. Harper fell asleep with her phone on her pillow and a smile on her face. The rest of the week at Lawrence Industrial passed in a wonderful blur. Harper spent her days photographing and her evenings texting with Ian. They had lunch together every day, sitting in the cafeteria and talking about everything and nothing. Harper learned that Ian played piano but refused to perform for anyone, that he had a younger sister who was a doctor in another state, that he loved old black and white movies and hiking and terrible science fiction novels. Ian learned that Harper had a degree in fine arts, but had fallen into industrial photography by accident when her father had gotten her a job photographing a construction site for a project proposal. He learned that she had a cat named Gizmo who was missing one ear from a childhood fight, that she stress-baked and often brought cookies to work, that she had always wanted to travel but never had the money or time. On Friday, Harper spent an embarrassing amount of time trying to figure out what to wear. Ian had said the restaurant was nice but not formal, which helped not at all. She finally settled on a dark green dress that was nicer than her usual clothes, but not so fancy that she felt like she was trying too hard. She left her hair down and applied makeup with a careful hand, staring at her reflection and wondering what Ian saw when he looked at her. He picked her up at 7 in a sleek black car that probably cost more than she made in 5 years. But when she opened the door, his face lit up in a way that made her forget to be nervous about the wealth disparity between them. "You look beautiful," he said, and it sounded genuine, not like a line. "Thank you. You look pretty good yourself." He was wearing dark jeans and a gray sweater that made his eyes look even bluer, more casual than she had seen him all week. The restaurant was in a converted warehouse on the river, with exposed brick walls and soft lighting. It was the kind of place that was clearly expensive, but did not feel stuffy or pretentious. They were seated at a table by the window, and Ian ordered wine while Harper looked at the menu and tried not to panic about the prices. "Order whatever you want," Ian said gently, clearly reading her mind. "This is my treat. Is this where you bring all your industrial photographers?" Harper asked, attempting to lighten the mood. "Just the ones who yell at me at charity galas." They both laughed and the tension broke. Dinner was wonderful. The food was incredible, but more than that, the conversation flowed easily. They talked about the photo project, about their childhoods, about dreams and fears. Ian told her about the pressure of running a company he had never expected to inherit so young. Harper told him about her mother leaving when she was 12 and how her father had raised her alone until he died 3 years ago. "I am sorry," Ian said, his hand covering hers on the table. "That must have been incredibly hard." "It was. He was my best friend." Harper blinked back unexpected tears. "I miss him every day. He would have loved seeing this project at your facility. He always said watching things being built was like watching art in motion. He sounds like someone I would have liked to know." They skipped dessert at the restaurant and went for a walk along the river instead, bundled in coats against the October chill. The city lights reflected off the water, and Harper felt like she was in a movie, something romantic and impossible. "I have a confession," Ian said as they walked. "I specifically requested you for the photography project. I looked up your work after the gala and you really are talented, but I also wanted an excuse to see you again." Harper's heart was pounding. "I have a confession too. I almost called to cancel 3 times because I was terrified of seeing you again." "Why terrified?" "Because you are you and I am me, and this does not make sense." Harper stopped walking and turned to face him. "You are a CEO worth millions. I live paycheck to paycheck and shop at thrift stores. We do not fit." Ian was quiet for a moment, his hands in his pockets, his breath visible in the cold air. "Can I tell you what I see when I look at you? I see someone passionate about her work, someone who finds beauty where others see nothing interesting. I see someone honest and funny and kind. I see someone who is not impressed by my money or my title, who talks to me like I am just a person." He took a step closer. "I have spent 2 years being lonely in a crowd, going on dates with women who wanted to be with Ian Lawrence, the CEO, but did not care about Ian the person. You are the first person in a very long time who has made me feel like myself." "I feel like myself with you too," Harper whispered. "That is what scares me. What happens when you realize I really do not fit in your world? When I embarrass you at some important event or say the wrong thing to the wrong person, then I will change my world." Ian cupped her face gently, his hands warm against her cold cheeks. "Harper, I am not looking for someone who fits into my life. I am looking for someone who makes me want to build a different life, someone worth reshaping everything for." He kissed her then, soft and gentle and perfect. Harper felt like she was melting into him, like everything else disappeared except the feeling of his lips on hers and his arms wrapping around her. When they finally broke apart, she was breathless and dizzy and completely, utterly lost. "Okay," she said softly. "Okay, let us try this. But you have to promise to tell me if I am ever too much or not enough if this stops working. I promise if you promise the same." Ian pressed his forehead to hers. "I am going to mess this up sometimes, Harper. I work too much, and I am not always good at expressing what I feel. I have baggage and flaws and a tendency to try to solve problems with money when that is not always the answer. I am stubborn and defensive, and I have trust issues from too many people leaving." Harper smiled. "So I guess we are both disasters. Perfect. We can be disasters together." They walked back to Ian's car hand in hand, and he drove her home, kissing her good night at her apartment door like they were teenagers. Harper went inside and leaned against the door, her heart racing, hardly able to believe any of this was real. The next morning, she woke to a text from Ian. "Good morning. I cannot stop thinking about last night. What are you doing today?" Harper had planned to spend Saturday catching up on laundry and editing photos. Instead, she texted back, "Nothing that cannot wait. What did you have in mind? I want to show you something. Wear comfortable clothes." An hour later, Ian picked her up in a different car, a rugged SUV instead of the sleek sedan from the night before. He was in jeans and a jacket, looking more relaxed than Harper had ever seen him. "We are going hiking." "Hiking?" Harper looked down at her sneakers. "I am not exactly equipped for serious hiking. It is an easy trail, I promise. I just want to show you one of my favorite places." They drove out of the city into the hills, talking the whole way. Ian told her about how he had discovered hiking after his father died, needing a way to clear his head and escape the pressure. Harper told him about her photography, how she dreamed of one day doing a book of industrial photography, but did not have the savings or connections to make it happen. The trail was indeed easy, winding through trees that were just starting to show autumn colors. The morning was crisp and clear, and Harper found herself genuinely enjoying the exercise and the company. They reached a viewpoint after about an hour, and Ian spread out a blanket he had brought in his backpack. "I may have packed lunch," he admitted, pulling out sandwiches and fruit and bottles of water. "You are very prepared." Harper sat down next to him, accepting a sandwich. "Do you come here often?" "Once or twice a month when I need to think. It is peaceful up here." Ian looked out at the view of the valley below, the river winding through it. "I used to come here with my father when I was younger. We would talk about the company, about life. After he died, I kept coming. It makes me feel close to him still." Harper leaned her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for sharing this with me." They spent the afternoon on the mountain, talking and laughing and stealing kisses. By the time they hiked back down, Harper's legs were sore, but her heart felt light. This was easy in a way she had not expected, comfortable despite how new it was. Over the next few weeks, Harper and Ian fell into a pattern. She continued working on the photography project during the day, and they spent most evenings together. Sometimes they went out to dinner or movies. Sometimes they stayed in, cooking together in Harper's tiny apartment or watching television with Gizmo sprawled across their laps. Ian met Harper's small circle of friends, charming them with his genuine interest in their lives. Harper met Ian's sister when she came to visit for a weekend, and the two women bonded over stories of Ian's childhood awkwardness. It was nearly perfect, except for the nagging voice in the back of Harper's mind that kept whispering this was too good to last. The voice got louder when Ian invited her to a company dinner with some of his major clients. "It is somewhat formal," he warned, "but I would really like you there. I am tired of attending these things alone." Harper agreed, but spent the week before the dinner anxious about it. She bought a new dress she could not really afford, practiced walking in heels, watched videos on proper formal dining etiquette. She did not tell Ian about any of this, not wanting to seem insecure. The dinner was at an exclusive restaurant Harper had only read about in magazines. She met Ian there, and he looked so proud when he introduced her to people as his girlfriend. Harper smiled and shook hands and tried to follow the conversations about quarterly projections and international markets. But she felt lost, out of her depth in a way she had not felt since that first night at the charity gala. The woman sitting next to Harper, the wife of one of the clients, tried to make conversation. "So, Harper, what do you do?" "I am a photographer, industrial photography mostly." "How interesting." The woman's tone suggested she found it anything but. "And how did you and Ian meet?" "At a charity gala. I was working and he bumped into me." "How charming." The woman turned to someone else, clearly done with the conversation. Harper made it through dinner with a smile fixed on her face, but by the time dessert arrived, she felt exhausted. Ian kept glancing at her with concern, clearly sensing her discomfort. In the car afterward, he asked, "Are you okay? You were quiet tonight." "I am fine. Just tired." Harper looked out the window, watching the city pass by. "Harper, talk to me. I can tell something is wrong." "I do not belong in that world, Ian." The words burst out of her, sharp and desperate. "I did not understand half of what people were talking about. That woman next to me looked at me like I was some kind of novelty, your working-class girlfriend who is cute but ultimately temporary. I do not fit." Ian pulled the car over to the side of the road and turned to face her. "That woman is a snob who has never worked a day in her life. Her opinion means nothing to me. But there will always be more people like her in your life, board members and clients and society friends. I am always going to be the one who does not know which fork to use or what to say." Harper felt tears burning her eyes. "I am trying so hard, Ian, but I do not know how to be the person you need. I need you to be yourself. That is all I have ever needed." Ian reached for her hand. I am sorry. I should have realized that dinner would be difficult. I am so used to those events that I forget how artificial and exhausting they can be. This is your life, though. This is your world. Then maybe my world needs to change. Ian squeezed her hand. Harper, I meant what I said that night by the river. I will reshape my world for you. I do not need fancy dinners and society events. I need you. You cannot just change your entire life because of me. That is not fair to you. Who says it is a change for the worse? Maybe you are showing me what really matters. Ian cupped her face, his thumb wiping away a tear that had escaped. I was miserable before I met you, Harper. I was successful and wealthy and completely empty. You make me happy. You make me want to be better, to do better. Please do not pull away from me because you are scared. Harper wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust that love could be enough to bridge the gap between their worlds. But fear was a powerful thing, and it whispered that she was setting herself up for heartbreak. Can we just go home? She asked quietly. I need some time to think. Ian drove her back to her apartment in silence, the easy comfort between them fractured. At her door, he kissed her forehead gently. I love you, Harper. I should have said it before now. I love you, and I am not giving up on us. I love you too, Harper whispered. That is why this scares me so much. She went inside and spent the night crying into Gizmo's fur, wondering how something so good had become so complicated. The next few days were difficult. Harper threw herself into work, finishing the photo project at Lawrence Industrial. The images were some of the best work she had ever done, a love letter to the beauty of industry and craftsmanship. But being at the facility without seeing Ian felt wrong. They texted, but the conversation was stilted, both of them dancing around the real issues. On Thursday, Harper was editing photos when Marcus appeared at her desk. There is someone here to see you. Harper looked up to find Ian standing in the doorway of the office, holding a rolled-up paper. He looked tired, like he had not been sleeping well. Can we talk? He asked. Harper followed him outside to a small park across from her office building. Ian sat on a bench and unrolled the paper, which turned out to be architectural drawings. What is this? Harper asked. Plans for a community center. I have been working on them for the past few months, but you made me realize I was approaching it all wrong. Ian pointed to different sections of the drawing. This will be a space for job training, GED classes, mentorship programs. There will be workshops for industrial trades, photography studios for artists, commercial kitchens for people learning culinary skills. It is going to be in the neighborhood I grew up in, the one that does not get funding for things like this. Harper stared at the plans, her throat tight. Ian, this is incredible. I have spent so much time focused on growing my company and making money that I lost sight of what really matters. My father built Lawrence Industrial because he wanted to create good jobs for people in our community. Somewhere along the way, I forgot that mission. I got caught up in profit margins and expansion. Ian rolled up the drawings. You reminded me that there is beauty in the work itself, in the people who build and create. You showed me what I had stopped seeing. This is not about me, Harper protested. It is, though. You challenged me to think differently, to value things beyond money and status. Ian took her hand. I do not want the life I had before I met you, Harper. I do not want meaningless dinner parties and shallow relationships. I want to build something that matters, and I want to do it with you. What if I cannot give you what you need? What if I am always going to be uncomfortable in your world? Then, we will change my world until it is our world. I will step back from some of the society obligations. I will focus on what truly matters to the company and the community. And you will help me stay grounded, keep reminding me what is important. Ian stood, pulling her up with him. I am asking you to take a risk on me, on us. I cannot promise it will always be easy, but I can promise I will work every day to make sure you feel valued and loved and like you belong." Harper looked at the architectural drawings, then at Ian's face, open and vulnerable and so full of hope. She thought about the past weeks, about how happy she had been, about how Ian had seen her in a way no one else ever had. And she realized that fear of losing something good was not a reason to walk away from it. "Okay," she said. "Okay, I am in. I am scared, but I am in." Ian's smile was brilliant, and he pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I love you. I love you so much." "I love you too." Harper buried her face in his chest, feeling the fear slowly loosen its grip. "We are going to figure this out together," Ian agreed. They stood in the park holding each other while people walked past, and Harper felt something settle in her chest. This was not going to be a perfect fairy tale. There would be challenges and misunderstandings and moments of doubt, but they would face them together, and that made all the difference. Over the following months, Harper watched Ian transform. He stepped back from some of the social obligations that did not align with his values, focusing instead on the community center project. He involved Harper in the planning, asking her to photograph the construction and help design the photography studio. He became more intentional about his time, protecting their evenings and weekends together. Harper worked on her own growth, pushing past her insecurities to meet Ian in his world when necessary. She got better at small talk with clients and learned to navigate formal events with more confidence. More importantly, she learned to speak up when she was uncomfortable, trusting that Ian would listen and adjust. The photo essay of Lawrence Industrial was published in a major industrial design magazine, and it launched Harper's career in a way she had never anticipated. Suddenly, she had job offers from companies around the country, requests for her unique perspective on industrial beauty. Ian celebrated each success with her, proud and supportive, and never threatened by her growing success. 6 months after that difficult dinner party, Ian invited Harper to the groundbreaking ceremony for the community center. She stood next to him while he gave a speech about second chances and community investment, about how one person can change your entire perspective. He looked at her when he said that last part, and Harper felt her heart swell. After the ceremony, as they were leaving the site, Ian pulled her aside. The construction area was mostly empty now, just muddy ground and stakes marking where the building would go. "This place is going to change lives," Ian said, looking around. "All because you made me see what was missing in mine." "You would have found your way here eventually," Harper said. "You are a good person, Ian. That was always in you, maybe, but you brought it out." Ian reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box, and Harper's breath caught. "I know we have only been together for 8 months, and maybe this is too fast, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life." He dropped to one knee in the mud, and Harper started crying before he even opened the box. "Harper Thorne, you reshaped my world the moment you yelled at me at that gala. You made me want to be better, do better, see better. I love you more than I thought it was possible to love someone. Will you marry me?" The ring was beautiful, a simple diamond that caught the afternoon light, but Harper barely saw it through her tears. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking. "Yes, of course, yes." Ian stood and kissed her, and Harper kissed him back with everything she had, mud and construction site and all. This was not the elegant proposal she might have imagined, but it was perfect because it was them. They got married 6 months later in a simple ceremony at the viewpoint where Ian had taken her on their second date. Harper wore a dress she loved, not because it was expensive, but because it made her feel beautiful. Ian cried when he saw her walking toward him, and Harper cried too, and probably half the guests cried because it was impossible not to feel the joy radiating from them both. Harper's small group of friends mixed with Ian's colleagues and family, and the blend felt right. The community center project members were there, and the workers from Lawrence Industrial and everyone who had become part of their combined world. During their first dance, Harper whispered, "I cannot believe this is real. I cannot believe you are mine." "I am yours," Ian said, holding her close. "And you are mine. We reshaped the world together, remember? Best collaboration ever." 2 years later, Harper stood in the completed community center, photographing the opening day activities. Young people moved through the space, exploring the workshops and studios. An older woman was taking a computer literacy class in one corner. A group of teenagers worked in the commercial kitchen, learning culinary skills. And in the photography studio that bore her name, a class of aspiring photographers learned to see beauty in unexpected places. Ian came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "This turned out pretty amazing. It really did." Harper leaned back against him, watching the lives being changed in real time. "Your father would be proud." "I think so too." Ian kissed her temple. "Are you ready to head home?" "We have that appointment tomorrow morning." Harper turned in his arms, unable to keep the smile off her face. "I am ready. Are you nervous, terrified, excited, all of the above?" Ian placed his hand on her still flat stomach. "I cannot believe we are going to be parents." "We are going to be terrible at this," Harper said cheerfully. "Absolutely terrible. The poor kid does not stand a chance." They laughed, and Harper felt overwhelmed with gratitude for this life they had built. It was not perfect, and they still had challenges. Ian still worked too much sometimes, and Harper still struggled with feeling out of place at certain events. But they had learned to communicate, to compromise, to prioritize what truly mattered. Harper's photography career had flourished, and she had published that book of industrial photography she had dreamed about. Ian had expanded the community center model to 3 other locations, each one tailored to the specific needs of its neighborhood. Lawrence Industrial continued to thrive, but Ian had restructured his role to allow for better work-life balance. They had bought a house together, something between Ian's mansion and Harper's apartment. It had a studio for her photography and an office for him, a big kitchen where they cooked together on weekends, and a yard for the dog they had adopted to keep Gizmo company. It was not the life either of them had imagined, but it was better. It was theirs. Harper remembered that night by the river when Ian had promised to reshape his world for her. She had been so scared then, so certain that love could not bridge the gap between them. But Ian had been right. He had reshaped his world, and she had reshaped hers, and they had met somewhere in the middle to build something new together. On the drive home from the community center, Harper reached over and took Ian's hand. "Do you remember what you said to me that night I told you I did not fit your world?" "I remember every word of that conversation. I was terrified I was losing you. You said you would reshape your world for me. Did you mean it, or were you just trying to convince me to stay?" Ian glanced at her, then back at the road. "I meant every word." "Why?" "Because I have been thinking about it a lot lately. You did reshape your world, Ian. You walked away from things that did not matter and invested in things that did. You changed your priorities and your lifestyle. You became a different person." Harper squeezed his hand. "But so did I. I learned to be brave and vulnerable. I learned to accept help and admit when I was struggling. I built confidence I did not know I could have. We both changed, and that made room for us to be together." "I like who I am with you," Ian said quietly. "I like the person I have become." "I like who I am with you too. I like who we are together." They pulled into their driveway, and Harper sat for a moment looking at their home. Through the window, she could see the photographs on the walls, the mix of her industrial art and their personal pictures. This was their world, built from love and compromise and the willingness to be better for each other. "Come on," Ian said, opening her door. "Let us go inside. I will make dinner and we can watch terrible television and pretend we are not panicking about tomorrow's ultrasound appointment." Best plan ever. That night, curled up on the couch with Ian's hand resting on her stomach, Harper thought about the journey that had brought them here. From that first meeting at the gala to this moment preparing to become parents, it had been an adventure full of challenges and joy in equal measure. She had been so wrong that night she told Ian she did not fit his world. It was not about fitting into each other's worlds. It was about building a new world together, one where they could both thrive. And that was exactly what they had done. The next morning, they sat in the doctor's office holding hands while the ultrasound technician moved the wand across Harper's belly. The screen showed a grainy image that slowly resolved into something recognizable. "There is your baby," the technician said with a smile. "Strong heartbeat, measuring right on track. Would you like to know the gender?" Harper and Ian looked at each other. They had discussed this moment endlessly, unable to decide if they wanted to know or be surprised. "Yes," they said at the same time, then laughed nervously. "It is a girl," the technician announced. "A healthy baby girl." Ian's eyes filled with tears and Harper felt her own spilling over. "A daughter, they were having a daughter. A girl," Ian whispered, staring at the screen. "Harper, we are having a daughter, I know." Harper could not stop smiling through her tears. "We are in so much trouble, the best kind of trouble." They drove home in a daze, calling family and friends to share the news. Ian's sister screamed with excitement and immediately started planning a baby shower. Harper's best friend demanded to be named godmother. Everyone they loved celebrated with them, thrilled for the new chapter beginning. That evening, Ian set up his laptop in the nursery, which was still empty except for paint samples taped to the walls. Harper sat on the floor while he pulled up websites about baby furniture and parenting books. "We need to read about babies," Ian said seriously. "I do not know anything about babies." No one knows anything about babies until they have one, then they figure it out as they go. Harper leaned against his shoulder. "We are going to be okay, Ian. We love each other and we will love her. That is enough to start with." "You always know exactly what to say to calm me down." Ian kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for taking a chance on me all those years ago. Thank you for not walking away when you were scared. Thank you for not letting me walk away. Thank you for being worth the risk." They sat in the future nursery making plans for their daughter, imagining the life she would have. Harper thought about the values they would teach her, about showing her that love was about growth and compromise and choosing each other every day. She thought about taking her daughter to the community center, showing her the importance of giving back, about teaching her to find beauty in unexpected places, to be brave and kind and true to herself. 5 months later, Harper gave birth to a beautiful baby girl they named Iris. She had Ian's blue eyes and Harper's dark hair, and she was absolutely perfect. Ian held her with trembling hands, staring at his daughter with an expression of wonder that made Harper fall in love with him all over again. "Hello, Iris," Ian whispered. "Welcome to the world. I am your father, and I promise to love you and protect you and embarrass you with how much I love your mother." Harper laughed through exhausted tears. "You cannot make promises like that. She will use it against you when she is a teenager." "I am okay with that." Ian carefully passed Iris to Harper. "Look at her. Look at what we made." Harper cradled her daughter, overwhelmed by the surge of love that filled her chest. This tiny person was half her and half Ian, the physical embodiment of their love story. "Hi, baby girl. I am your mom. We are going to figure this out together, okay?" The first weeks of parenthood were exhausting and chaotic and absolutely magical. Ian took leave from work to be home with them, and they stumbled through diaper changes and feeding schedules and nights with no sleep. But even in the exhaustion, Harper had never felt more content. One afternoon when Iris was about 3 weeks old, Harper found Ian in the nursery just watching their daughter sleep. He looked up when Harper entered, and his smile was soft. "I keep thinking about that night by the river when I told you I would reshape my world for you," he said quietly. "I had no idea then how much my world would actually change. This is so much better than anything I imagined." Harper moved to stand next to him, looking down at Iris in her crib. "We reshaped it together, built something new, the best thing I ever built." Ian wrapped his arm around Harper's waist. "I love you, I love our life, I love that I get to do this with you. I love you too." Harper leaned into him, feeling the rightness of this moment, this life, this family. Years passed in a beautiful blur. Iris grew into a curious, spirited little girl who loved photographing flowers with her mother and visiting the community center with her father. She attended the groundbreaking for the 4th community center location when she was 5, wearing a tiny hard hat and holding the ceremonial shovel with serious concentration. Harper's career continued to flourish. She became known for her unique perspective on industrial art, and her work was displayed in galleries and museums. But her favorite photos were still the ones she took of her family, candid moments that captured the love and joy of their everyday life. Ian found balance between his work and his family. He remained CEO of Lawrence Industrial, but delegated more responsibilities, focusing on strategic vision rather than day-to-day operations. The company thrived under his leadership, but more importantly, Ian thrived too. He was present for dinner every night, for Iris's school events, for the small moments that made up a life. On their 5th wedding anniversary, they returned to the viewpoint where they had gotten married. Ian's sister watched Iris for the night, and Harper and Ian hiked up the trail as the sun was setting, spreading out a blanket at the top just as they had on their second date. 5 years, Harper said, looking out at the familiar view. "It feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago at the same time." "Best 5 years of my life." Ian pulled her close. "Do you ever regret it, taking a chance on someone so different from you?" "Never, not for a single second." Harper kissed him softly. "You are the best decision I ever made." "Even when I am annoying and work too much and forget to put the milk back in the refrigerator, even then. Especially then, because it reminds me you are human and not some perfect fantasy." Harper smiled. "I love you for who you are, Ian, all of it, flaws included." "Good, because you are stuck with me now. For better or worse, remember." "I remember. Best vows ever." They watched the sunset together, comfortable in the silence that came from years of knowing each other. Harper thought about how far they had come from that night at the charity gala when she had snapped at a stranger who would become her entire world. She thought about all the fears she had overcome, all the ways they had both grown and changed. "Do you think we will still be hiking up here when we are old?" Harper asked. "Like in our 70s or 80s, complaining about our knees but doing it anyway?" "Absolutely. We will be that adorable old couple that everyone finds inspirational." Ian grinned. "Iris will bring our grandchildren up here and tell them stories about how I fell in love with their grandmother when she yelled at me, and how you convinced me to take a chance on someone way out of my league. You were never out of your league. I was lucky you gave me the time of day." They talked until the stars came out, making plans for the future and reminiscing about the past. When they finally hiked back down in the darkness, using their phone flashlights to light the way, Harper felt overwhelmingly grateful for this life she had almost been too scared to accept. 10 years after they met, Harper and Ian stood at another community center opening, this one in the city where Ian had grown up. Iris was 9 now, taking photos with her own camera that Harper had given her for her birthday. The community center was the largest yet, with expanded programs for job training, arts education, and family support services. During the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Ian gave a speech about second chances and believing in people, about how one person caring enough to see potential could change everything. He talked about his father's legacy and his own journey to understanding what truly mattered. "None of this would exist without my wife," Ian said, looking at Harper in the crowd. "She taught me to see beauty in places I had stopped looking. She challenged me to use my resources to make real change instead of just pursuing profit. She showed me that reshaping your world is not a sacrifice but a gift when you do it for the right reasons." Harper wiped at her eyes, trying not to cry in front of all these people. But Ian was not done. "When Harper told me she did not fit my world, I knew I had two choices. I could let her walk away, or I could build a world we could both fit into. I chose the second option, and it was the best decision I ever made." Ian smiled at her. "Thank you for letting me reshape my world for you, Harper. Thank you for reshaping yours for me. Thank you for building this life with me." The crowd applauded, and Iris tugged on Harper's hand. "Mom, you are crying." "Happy tears, baby. Always happy tears." After the ceremony, Harper found Ian surrounded by people wanting to talk about funding and programs and future plans. She caught his eye across the room, and he smiled at her, that special smile reserved just for her. Later, his expression said, "We will celebrate later." And they did, that night after Iris was asleep, sitting on their back porch with glasses of wine and talking about everything and nothing. These were Harper's favorite moments, the quiet times when it was just the two of them, no audience or expectations. "You ever think about what your life would have been like if we had never met?" Harper asked, her head resting on Ian's shoulder. "I try not to. It is a depressing thought." Ian pressed a kiss to her hair. "I would probably still be going through the motions, making money but not really living. You saved me from that, Harper. You saved me too. I would have stayed safe and small, never taking risks or believing I deserved more." Harper tilted her head to look at him. "We saved each other." "Best collaboration ever," Ian said, echoing her words from their wedding. They sat in comfortable silence, watching fireflies dance in the yard. Gizmo was curled up at Harper's feet, ancient now but still her faithful companion. Inside, Iris slept with her camera on her nightstand, already following in her mother's creative footsteps. This was Harper's world now. Not the industrial photography that had once defined her, not the society events she had feared, but something entirely new. A world built on love and compromise, on challenging each other to grow, on creating something meaningful together. She had been so wrong to think she did not fit Ian's world. She had not needed to fit it. She had needed to build a new one with him, and that made all the difference. "I love you," Harper said softly, not for the first time and certainly not for the last. "I love you too," Ian replied, holding her close. "Always and forever." And there, on their back porch under the stars, surrounded by the life they had built together, Harper knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. Years continued to pass, each one bringing new adventures and challenges. Iris grew into a teenager who inherited her mother's artistic eye and her father's business sense. She started a photography program at the community center, teaching younger kids to find beauty in their neighborhoods. Harper watched her daughter with pride, seeing the values she and Ian had instilled taking root. Lawrence Industrial continued to innovate and grow, but always with an eye toward community impact and ethical practices. Ian hired from the community center programs, giving opportunities to people who had been overlooked by other companies. The business became known not just for its products, but for its values, a direct reflection of Ian's growth as a leader. Harper published 2 more books of photography, each one a love letter to different aspects of industry and craft. She gave talks at universities and workshops, encouraging other artists to find their unique perspectives. But her favorite moments were still the quiet ones, photographing ordinary moments that told extraordinary stories. On their 15th anniversary, Ian surprised Harper with a trip back to the Riverside Hotel where they had first met. The grand ballroom was decorated for a private dinner, just the 2 of them and a string quartet playing softly in the background. "This is where it all started," Ian said, leading her onto the dance floor. 15 years ago, you yelled at me right over there by that column." Harper laughed, remembering that night and how nervous she had been. "Best decision I ever made, being rude to a stranger. Best thing that ever happened to me, bumping into you." Ian pulled her close, swaying to the music. "I meant what I said that night by the river, Harper. Every word. I reshaped my world for you, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. I know." Harper looked up at him, seeing the same love in his eyes that had been there from the beginning. "And I would take the risk of loving you again and again, no matter how scared I was." They danced in the empty ballroom, alone with their memories and their love. This was their story, born from a chance meeting and nurtured through challenges and growth. It was not perfect, but it was real and true and entirely theirs. As the song ended, Ian dipped Harper dramatically, making her laugh. When he pulled her back up, his expression was serious. "Thank you for building this life with me," he said. "Thank you for not giving up when things got hard. Thank you for being my partner in everything." "Thank you for seeing me when I felt invisible," Harper replied. "Thank you for believing in us even when I doubted. Thank you for loving me exactly as I am." They kissed in the middle of the empty ballroom, and Harper felt the same spark she had felt on their first kiss by the river. Some things never changed, and the love between them was one of those constants. The years ahead would bring more changes. Iris would go to college, start her own photography business, fall in love. Harper and Ian would become grandparents, their hair turning gray and their bodies slowing down, but their love never wavering. Lawrence Industrial would continue to thrive and evolve, always maintaining the values Ian had rediscovered through Harper's influence. The community centers would expand, reaching more lives and creating more opportunities. But through it all, the foundation remained the same. 2 people who had taken a chance on each other, who had been willing to reshape their worlds to make room for love. 2 people who proved that differences could be bridges instead of barriers when you approach them with open hearts and genuine commitment. Harper Thorne and Ian Lawrence built a world together, and it was beautiful.